start with our chaplain prayer and pledges, and we are honored today to have Police Chaplain Ralph Dawkins come forward and lead us in both.
Good morning, everyone. Let us pray. Father, we thank you for the opportunity to invoke prayer and your word into the gathering of city leaders, officials, and concerned citizens. Lord, your word declares that we should acknowledge you in all of our ways and you would direct our paths. And you said that if we delight ourselves in you, you would give us the desires of our heart. There are many agenda items today, and I pray that you would address them, each and every one of them, with integrity and courage and the community best interest in mind. Your word declares in Jeremiah 29 that you already know the plans that you have for us, plans to prosper us and not for evil, and plans that will give us a future and a hope. So we ask your blessing on the people who have been called upon to lead this community, make decisions in the community in which we work and play. So I lift up the mayor, her staff and assistants, the city council members, the city manager, and every person and department that is instrumental in leading and guiding and directing our city. I pray for the police chief and the entire police force, the sheriff's department, that they will continue to protect and serve the residents of our city. I pray for the fire chief and the fire department, and all the first responders who serve our city. And lastly, I pray that you would bless our city and community with economic prosperity. May you draw in and attract to our city industry, businesses, and corporations that will produce jobs and revenue and help us to grow and prosper. In Jesus' name, amen and amen. Let us pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you.
Did you go to the Buffalo Soldier thing?
I did. We will now move into the public comment portion of the agenda. Individuals, if you choose to make a public comment, please state your name, your address, or SMD area. Each citizen can speak just once per item unless asked to comment by council. Public comment is 3 minutes unless extended by council or translation services, and a proponent or opponent 5 minutes unless extended by council or translation services. Council has no obligation to respond to comments or questions from the public. Any response from a member of the City Council to non-agenda comments is limited to a statement of specific factual information, recitation of existing policy, and directing staff to place a subject on a future agenda. Are there individuals in the audience today who would like to come forward and make public comment? If so, please do.
Before he gives his name and address, can I pass out a visual to you guys?
You'll give one to the city attorney as well. Okay, so we can share, but one for the city attorney, and then we'll pass the other two.
Jason Davis, Clotworthy, 201 South Bishop Street, Single Member District 5. Mayor and City Council, I am here this morning to bring to your attention the closing of the San Angelo Nature Center. This hidden gem is a myriad of things to our community. It encourages educational opportunities, hands-on experience for volunteers as well as visitors, and it provides a home to many forms of wildlife unique to West Texas. From the time I first visited the Nature Center at 5 years old, I have been counting down the days until I would be old enough to become a volunteer intern at the Nature Center. That time came just this year and now has abruptly been taken away not only from myself, but also from the other volunteers and future volunteers of our community. We are being robbed of a great educational experience. I'm not alone in my love for the Nature Center. Our community as a whole desires to see this facility fulfill its potential as a top attraction for San Angelo, rather than to become another abandoned gravesite in the city. What I ask today is that you give us the opportunity to look at private partnerships or fundraising opportunities to reopen or even reimagine and expand a new nature center for kids like me. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much. Anybody else who'd like to come forward and offer public comment?
Madam Mayor and City Council Member District 5. Hello, my name is Lucille Goodman. I am 13 years old. I am an active member of American Heritage Girls Troop 44. I had my 5th birthday party at the Nature Center. My American Heritage Girls Troop had a field trip there in 2019 to help us fulfill our Nature and Wildlife badge. Throughout my childhood, I have attended many community events where the Nature Center had an animal demonstration. I just turned 13 in July and anticipated holding an internship position at the Nature Center this fall. The Nature Center is an important part of creating healthy interests, hobbies, and downtime for all members of our community. I know our Madam Mayor and the City Council can find a solution to keep our Nature Center open. Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward. Further public comment? I'll count to 3, and then we'll move on from public comment. 1, 2, 3. The public comment section is now closed on the agenda. We will move on to the consent agenda. Are there any items that council would like to have pulled on the consent agenda? I will start with Larry.
No, ma'am.
Karen? No, ma'am. Lucy?
No, ma'am.
Harry?
No, ma'am.
Tom?
No, ma'am.
Tommy?
No, ma'am.
With that, I would ask for a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
Motion to approve is presented.
A motion by Karen Hesse-Smith and seconded by Harry. Any public comment on any of the items on consent agenda? Seeing none, hearing none, we'll take a vote. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hearing hearing all ayes, motion passes 6-0. Consent agenda, 7-0, consent agenda is approved. We will move into the regular agenda. Comments regarding items on the regular agenda may be made by the public when each item is discussed as outlined above. Applicants, proponents, and appellants are exempt from the time limit above and instead must limit their remarks to less than 5 minutes. Item A is consider awarding FS-10-23 fleet vehicles to multiple vendors in the amount of $2,942,000 for the purchase of pickups, police vehicles, and cars for the fiscal year 2022-23 budget for corresponding expenses and authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute all related documents. Ryan, you're on.
Good morning, Mayor.
Good morning.
And Council, Mr. Valenzuela. It's a pleasure to be with you. It's been a while, so glad to be here. The item before you today has 2 main topics, which is the reason for discussion this morning. One is the award of the bid, and the other is the financial aspect of moving funds in order to complete the purchases needed. So I'll give a quick overview, and please feel welcome to interrupt or ask questions as you might need to.
We will ask our city council members to ask for permission to please offer comments or questions. Thank you.
This bid is a little different than what we've seen that we've requested council's approval for in the past. We've lumped a lot of the vehicles together that we're interested in purchasing for the remainder of this year and next year. So we won't be bringing to you a bid for each vehicle type, for example, a half-ton pickup and a 3/4-ton pickup, et cetera. Instead, this bid lumped these vehicles together because of some specific situations that I'll elaborate on as we progress. This bid type did allow vendors to bid on our vehicle purchases without having specific pricing. Again, I'll elaborate on that more in a moment, but it resembles greatly what we see in a lot of our purchasing cooperative bids, the format of this bid. allowed for better and easier responses, and I think that's shown by the responses we did receive, which, while only 3, is more than we typically see on our bids. So I'm pleased to see that. We are also asking for this year to award this bid to multiple vendors. Again, I'll elaborate on some challenges we're experiencing, but this will assist us in the process of purchasing the items needed for the year, where we've had some challenges there as well. Those challenges do include several of these aspects. One is if you've been in the car purchasing game for the last few years, there are some great difficulties that consumers have, and we have similar difficulties as well. Vehicle availability is much more difficult than it was 5 years ago. We, in some cases, take what we find in the sense of making sure that they fit the needs with some leniency. And what I mean by that is we look for different things that still fit. So maybe a different brand or a different shape and size that still accomplishes the goal we need, because availability is so difficult. So we do struggle with that, and this bid helps accommodate that for us. We've also been given, in this last year, we've been given an allocation by manufacturer. So what that means is that we were told how many vehicles we would be allowed to purchase from that manufacturer. So that really puts a damper on it when we award to one specific vendor, only allowed a certain number of vehicles from that vendor. That doesn't give us much flexibility to continue to purchase as the year progresses. So again, this format of bid will let us buy from multiple vendors, multiple manufacturers, and helps alleviate that issue. We do see some order bank and pricing issues, and as I elaborate on that, I'll point out that the manufacturer controls the buying process as far as the dealer or the vendor is concerned. So while our bid is awarded to a specific dealer, the manufacturer really dictates how that dealer is able to interact with not only the consumer, but the dealer themselves. And so the manufacturer is opening an order bank at a certain date, and then they close it when they're ready to. And what that means is we can order within the window, or we may not get to order at all. The dealer also may not have pricing until the last minute. When that order bank opens, they may get pricing that very day, maybe just a week before. That also does not lend us in our process, our legal process of purchasing, to be able to accomplish what we need to do with such a small window. And so we have missed out in the past being able to fall within that window. We do experience still some order cancellations. I expect, and you'll see some of these numbers shortly, I expect that we will have approximately a dozen vehicles canceled this year that we ordered last September. So again, having some flexibility in our bid award will hopefully alleviate some of these challenges. Here are the numbers and the quantities that was expressed in your background information, just so we could put it up on the screen. These are the vehicle types that were bid. There were no other vehicle types, so you won't see van in here. That's because it was not bid. So if we intend to purchase a van in the future for some reason, that will be in addition to this bid. So we will either bid that out separately, depending on the value, or get quotes, et cetera. And you'll either see that because of the value, or we'll purchase moving forward through the regular path. I will note, as you see the numbers, the quantities on half-ton pickups, note that that includes the dozen that I don't believe we're going to get from fiscal year 23 that were ordered. So while it looks large, it is large, that's because we're virtually doubling that number. We could still get those units. They have not officially been canceled, but I think the writing on the wall is that they'll be canceled. So my request is, if you'll approve those numbers, we will be able to reorder as soon as we're able to, cancel the old PO, of course, and reorder when the time comes. The same thing applies to the line that says 3/4 ton pickups and 1 ton chassis cabs. Those were the units that were restricted to us last year in the quantities that we could buy. I was able to buy 5 of those units last year, and we needed approximately a dozen. So we are backlogged a little bit, so those numbers are higher because of that fact. We did receive the 5 that we ordered, but we needed several more than that.
Several's not a number.
Yes, ma'am. The numbers we needed last year, we were cutting because we simply couldn't buy them because we weren't able to from the manufacturer's perspective. But we were trying to buy 11 or 12 of those units is what was on our list for the year. So our request is to award this bid, FS 1023, to the multiple vendors, as you see noted there below. These were the 3 vendors that responded to the bid, and the amount that you see there, $2.942 million. That does include the funding from the remaining vehicles that I believe will be canceled this year. It includes next year's funding, and it includes the funding that we are asking we pull forward from next year into this year so that we can take action when the order banks open.
What percentage of this is estimated to be in the fiscal year 23-24 versus fiscal year 22-23?
I'm sorry, I don't have the percentage, but I have the dollar amount, and that amount is $1.338 million that we are pulling from next year's budget into this year.
So $1.6 million is coming from existing budget.
Which will be used in FY '24. Yes, ma'am. So we're,
Yes. Harry has a question.
Ryan, if we approve this today, when would they get ordered and when would we receive them?
very good
Biggest question is, when will we receive them?
Yes, sir. I can't answer that for you. I would like to say that we traditionally see a 3 to 4 month turnaround on a vehicle build from the time of order. But that is unfortunately not the case anymore. We have half-ton pickups ordered and police cars ordered from August and September of last year that we have not received. So I would love to say 3 to 4 months is the typical industry average. It unfortunately is not any longer. So I don't really have an answer for you.
So a good number of these vehicles will actually end up being received in fiscal year '24. Is that correct?
That's correct. Of the current vehicles ordered in fiscal year '23, we will see many of those received in October to December is the estimate.
So not in the balance of '23.
And we're not talking about these units that we're requesting to order for fiscal year '24. We are talking about the ones that are previously ordered. Yes, sir.
So we're actually going to end up paying for them after we receive them. Typically, that's net 30 days, which means we're really going to be paying for them in fiscal year '24 anyway. Is that correct?
We are, yes, sir, but the PO that was issued does secure those funds, and if necessary, we'll carry them over, and you'll see that carryover request to do so.
I just wanted the citizens to understand that even though we're pushing some of them, bringing some of the money forward from fiscal year '24 into this fiscal year, we're actually not going to be paying for a majority of these vehicles until after October 1st.
That is correct.
Okay.
Tom?
Yeah, thank you, Brandon. Ryan, my question here, and this whole council and I, we're a hometown crowd, but what we look at here is, Richardson, Texas, and Bernie, Texas. We get that. So if I understand it right, the manufacturer controls this. They probably most likely control the margin that the dealership gets to provide too. So they're working off an allocation to each different dealership. Would that be correct?
I probably could not speak to that. I think each manufacturer has their own model, and I couldn't speak necessarily to how Chevrolet or Ford does that.
Right. Well, just my point is, we'd love to see these dollars spent more in Angelo than out of town, and if you get a chance to maximize that, we'd appreciate it.
That's really a result, if I'm not mistaken, by the fact that when you put the purchase order out there or the request to provide, they were not able to provide those vehicles, so they didn't make a bid
I think
and
it's an
present it
allocation of
forward.
things. Allocation.
Just
each
to be
dealership.
sure we say that. Correct?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, the vendors are doing everything they want to sell. They absolutely do. That is not the case that they don't want to sell us vehicles. They just are in some cases restricted by the manufacturer.
Well, where I'm going with that, also when we have to do warranty work and take them back, I mean, does Jim Bass Ford, I would not be as quick to put it at the front of the line on something that came from me versus something that came from Bernie. But I realize it's us. Anyway, that was just my point of bringing it, keeping it home.
Yes, Tommy?
Ryan, zooming out just a little bit, I assume, which I don't want to do, that's the reason for my question, that this different purchasing model this year could save us money overall long-term, not necessarily in 1 year, but if this is the way the market is and the way it continues to be, this may save us money to do it as you are doing it this year as opposed to the way you've done it in previous years.
Yes, sir. Good question, and let me elaborate on that. Since we are requesting the award to 3 vendors, the intention is to check with those vendors each time a vehicle is specified and needed. That way, those 3 vendors can provide us quotes at that specific moment, or they can say, we don't have that. And so, yes, absolutely, it does continue the competition past the bid to make sure that our vendors are responding as aggressively as they can.
Any questions on this other side of the council?
Tommy got mine.
Okay, got it. All right, so with that, then I would need a motion to approve item A, awarding the 2.942 for the purchase of these vehicles. May I have that motion?
So move.
So moved by
Second.
Tommy, seconded by Larry. Any public comment in regards to this item? We will take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
None opposed, motion passes 7-0. We'll move on to the last item on the consent agenda, and it is item B, which is consider approving tax increment reinvestment zone tiers incentive funding for 3 private projects and amending the fiscal year 2022-23 budget for the corresponding expenses. In the North Tiers area, the property located at 1718 North Bryant. Item 2, in the South Tiers area for the property located at 1 West Concho totaling $72,294. And the third one is in the South Tiers area for the property located at 213 North Chadbourn totaling $72,294. You're on, John.
Thank you. John James, Director of Planning and Development Services. As you mentioned, this first project is, we only had one project move forward from the north, 1718 North Bryant, requesting $68,800. You can see down here we have just under $1.5 million available. We have been successful recently on getting more projects from the north. Our last cycle, you may recall, had a larger number of projects. We do have a couple of projects pending that were tabled at the Tiers Board, and so there are a couple of more Tiers North projects that should be coming forward soon as well. As I mentioned, this project is requesting $68,800 with a total project cost of about $107,000. Staff did recommend the full incentive amount, as did the Tiers Board. And the work is demolition and disposal for an ongoing project. Their plan was to build a new building, improve the parking lot, and they did not want to wait on the Tiers process to begin doing that. And as you know, you can't spend Tiers money on things that have already happened. You can't proceed with the project until it's been approved. And so they chose to go ahead and move forward with building that new building. And then the old building that they were replacing, they left on the site, and now they're asking for this money as part of the project to demo that old building. You can see just a few pictures of the area. I think that is the old building, and then I think this is the new building that you can see here. And as I said, that has already been constructed, and then their request is just for demolition. Before I move on, if you have any questions about that particular project, or I'll move on to the next, the South
Questions
projects.
for John on this particular item? No one has questions, move on.
Okay, and we did have 3 funding requests for the South Tiers. As you can see, there's only about $144,000 available. The board discussed, in the past, they have taken a couple of different tactics. In some cases, they tried to split the available money between all eligible projects. And in other years, they have recommended more fully funding fewer projects, but the highest rated projects. And that's what they did in this case. All three projects requested $75,000. We only had about $144,000 available, so they selected the two highest priority projects to fund almost all of what they're asking. The 144 doesn't get us quite to 75 each, but it is about 72,000. I'll note before I get off of this slide that this item does include a budget amendment. To get to that 144,000, it includes adding in the accrued interest to date, which you have to approve a budget amendment to move that accrued interest into the available funding for projects.
Question, it says 5 West Concho Avenue. Our paperwork says 1 West Concho Avenue.
Yeah, they provided different information. It's sort of both. The project is actually at 5 West Concho, but it's part of an expansion of 1 West Concho, and so it's sort of both properties.
My question and comment would be the fine, and historically, when there's limited money, we don't go back to the budget and use accrued interest. In fact, most people who've asked for $75,000 have very often gotten $30,000 or $50,000, et cetera. So my question and concern is this new approach to it, when in the past we've basically said, and then the other have basically said, based off of the request, there's X amount, you get a percentage of it. And so by the timing of these requests has opened the door for them to get a larger percentage than the past few recipients have been able to get. And then the question is, with your comment that they determined the higher priority, what was the 325 West First Street project?
That was, it's over near the Walgreens, and it's a vacant lot adjacent to that, and it would be for a drive-through tea, retail tea store. And so I think the thinking was that the two projects recommended were both in the downtown in dilapidated buildings that really needed improvement, versus the 325 West First Street was a vacant site where they would be building a brand-new building in sort of the suburban auto-oriented part of downtown, in that area where there's fast food and other things. And so they felt that using that money to rehabilitate existing dilapidated buildings that needed work were higher priority. And as you can see in the tiers incentive policy, that historic preservation and those buildings is a higher priority versus new builds on vacant property.
Other questions, further questions from Council? Larry?
I noticed in one of the requests that the individual indicated that they would be resolving any ADA problems associated with the property. I just wondered if the other two had also taken a look at how ADA would impact what they're choosing to do.
We have let them, all the projects, know that is something we'll be looking at. In fact, at the last Tiers Board meeting, they had a discussion and recommended moving forward with a change to the Tiers incentive policy to specifically include ADA improvements as a high priority item that would be a factor in their decisions moving forward. I think at our next meeting with them, we'll actually be bringing that change to them, to the incentive policy, which then you all will see in a couple of months.
Fantastic.
Because there is such a limited amount of money always in the tier zone, I don't really support going back and getting the interest and adding to this. So just FYI. Go ahead and do the 213 North Chadbourn. Go ahead.
Sure, yeah, and this is Valley Vending at 213 North Chadbourn. As I mentioned, they requested $75,000. It's a total project cost of $284,000. And the summary of the work is they're doing facade improvements, which is the bulk of it, a little bit of landscaping in front. It does meet the category of historic preservation. And then they are in the rear, they do have some outdoor screening of a storage area. So this is what it looks like today. You can see it's boarded up. I should mention that both of these projects in the south have gotten Design and Historic Review Commission approval, so the designs have been approved through that process. This is a rendering of what that would look like once they're completed with the project. Any questions on that one before I move on? And then the 5 West Concho project, the total project cost, I think, is what that, I think those are reversed. It's $75,000 requested, $101,000 of the total project. The recommended incentive is $72,000, which is half of that available funding if we include the interest. And their work is primarily facade, but also a little bit of landscaping as well as the fire sprinkler system. This is the building as it looks today. Again, it's similar to the first one, that it's boarded up. It definitely needs some exterior work and improvements to rehabilitate that frontage. This is the rendering that they provided to the Design and Historic Review Commission, which was approved. And so again, that's just a summary. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Further questions from Council? Tommy?
John, can you speak to just maybe the conversation or the thought process that went into reaching in and grabbing that interest amount? There's got to be a little more to the story that might be informational, at least to me, educational and informational, as to why you did it this time, why it hadn't happened before, et cetera?
Yeah, basically it was a request from the Tiers Board. When they saw that we had about $138,000 available, and they wanted to fund those two projects as much as possible, one of the board members asked the question, well, how much interest are we earning on the money we have, and is there accrued interest that is available that we could move into that fund to be able to fund them a little bit closer to the $75,000 they were asking. So as you can see, it's not a huge amount of money, but it does add, a little less than $3,000 for each project. That money ultimately ends up in the Tiers account. I mean, it's interest being accrued to the account, but they just wanted to basically pull it in earlier than would normally happen.
And I asked the question because if you take a look at the last ones that we approved in the southern tiers, we didn't reach back to get, and most of those projects were funded at about 50% of their request. And so the request was significantly less. And so it's just seems a little odd now to be doing that when we've not been able to fund at this level in the past, and we haven't looked forward to this amount of money. And then I would also ask, what is the projected dollar amount for the next funding cycle?
We haven't looked at that number. I don't know if Tina or someone has access to that. We typically look at that as we get a little bit closer to October 1st in the new budget year. But off the top of my head, I don't know what that expected revenue for the coming year would be.
Tina, can you offer anything? Yes, Tom?
While she's coming up, John, as far as going into this part of the 50, so I think part of the thing we have to worry about is being fair and consistent, over time and historically. Have we ever allowed anybody to go in and pull that money, interest income forward or backwards?
Not that I'm aware of. Again, there's been some discussions at the Tiers Board about interest and how we do that. We've made some changes recently regarding how interest is calculated on Tiers money. And for whatever reason, there are some Tiers Board members that are interested in changing how we do that. And so I think their intent is to do this more often. Every cycle we have, pull in that interest so we have more money to give out. So yes, we haven't done this before in the past, but I think it's their goal to move forward doing this, to be consistent doing this as a new way. It really doesn't matter.
You answered my question.
Sure.
We haven't even shown a face card that they could do this in the past.
No.
And because
Right,
of
it's
people's
only
knowledge
recently
of
that-
it,
right.
it has now come forward. Okay.
Right.
You tell me what I needed to know.
Tommy?
Well, I think you just answered it sounds as if this, I'm going to say, would be setting a precedent, and then they would then begin doing that on a go-forward basis or change something that, in fact, they could do that. So that, I think you answered the question for me that, yeah, this could be a likely strategy on a moving forward basis.
And I
But it
think-
hasn't been in the
It hadn't
past.
been in
That's
the
right.
past.
And so
Right.
once you change the policy, I can understand doing it, but the policy hasn't been approved yet.
Tina Darsky, Director of Finance. You're correct that we haven't pulled from interest income in the past in this fund. Typically, we don't do that in any of our funds. This interest at the end of the fiscal year would go into their fund balance, and then it would be available for a future fiscal year is how we typically handle interest income.
Which is what's happened in the past. So they have spent interest in the past, it's just they've spent it after it's
Process.
gone to fund balance.
We haven't
in the
done it as
subsequent-
part of the funding cycle.
Exactly.
You know, what's the concern with doing it this way, as far as pulling immediately rather than allowing it to build up?
I think what, the mayor and I think Tommy said, setting a precedent and, beginning to rely on the interest income in the current year, which typically we would use in a future fiscal year once we know for sure what's there, after the audit and everything, so.
It's not to discredit the quality of these projects. That's not the comment. It's just setting a precedent that hasn't been there before. And also at a time period when we're funding at a higher level of the request than we have in the past. So past recipients have received a much smaller percent of the $75,000. And then we've eliminated one request, which again is, the Tiers Board's option to do it. But seems like we're changing up a lot right here on this request.
I think it would be
Tommy.
I think it would be a fair question from past recipients to say, why didn't you do this for me?
That's my concern.
so,
And in the
yeah.
past, what we've done is every request has received a percentage of the request, and we've never eliminated a project that requested if they met design and historic review approval and if, in fact, there was money available. So it seems to me we are stepping out there in a couple of ways that have not been done before, and I'm very concerned about that. And if I, again, was, as Tommy said, a recipient before, we didn't rank the priority of those projects necessarily and decided to eliminate one, we've always funded something. And again, 213 North Chadbourne and 5 Western, it's not about the quality of the project, it's just a tremendous difference in precedent than what we've done in the past, and I'm concerned about that.
Mayor, I think originally your question to me was property tax valuations in the tiers for the next fiscal year. We have not yet received those from the appraisal district.
When would you get those?
We expect to receive them any day. I know they're working on the worksheets, and they'll be hopefully this week.
Yes, Tom?
Just how accurate is that number going to be there, okay?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry, I
don't-
just had to throw that one in.
No comment.
I'm sorry.
Stop it.
It's a moving target.
So, yeah, so I'm with you, Brenda. I think if we pull interest income from a current year to, we set precedents for all other budgets and discussions for
Yeah, I don't think we should do
councils to
it.
come.
If they want to bring a change to us to do that,
that's
then, well,
different.
yeah, that we can have that. Then we can have a different conversation. But
correct.
yeah,
So I think the motion should be we would approve with the, not allowing the 5766 to be included in the approved amount. That needs to be pulled out. And with that, I think the support is there for the two projects. But again, I've never known the Tiers Board to pick and choose projects. And so I'm somewhat concerned about picking projects. And again, it has nothing to do with these two projects. It's precedent that's going on that hasn't been before. And I don't know if there's some political issues behind it, but I think it's concerning. So I have go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to ask, can they actually award them less money than $75,000, and then those people come back later on and request more money? I mean, like...
Not if it's the same project. if it's a different request for that same facility, but on a different item, yes, they can.
And I would add that the policy that was adopted recently, there was a change that it doesn't prohibit somebody from getting money for the same project, but a project that has received money in the past is given a lower priority. So if there are two equal projects, the board's preference and your all's preference in the policy is to give the money to one that has not received it in the past. Having said that, we have had multiple projects that have done multiple cycles as well.
But they usually, one might be fire prevention, one might be ADA, one might be something else. So it hasn't
That's
been
right.
the same project needing more money. It's been the same building with multiple projects.
That's right.
So I'd like that motion to
And
be,
I'll make the motion
Thank
to
you.
approve the projects, all projects as presented, less the 5766 for the two in the southern tiers.
is there a second?
I'll second.
And Tom seconds it. There is a second by Tom, and with that, we'll take public opinion or public comments. Seeing none, we'll take a vote. All those in favor,
Mayor?
say aye. Yes?
Just for clarification purposes, the 5766 then would be split in half as far as the funding the
Correct.
project?
Yes.
So it'd be
Yes, I don't think
2883.
we want to get in the middle of that.
Correct.
Just want to be
So,
specific, so
yes.
it's not
Half of
one,
the
so
available
one
to
project doesn't
each.
get it all in.
No,
yeah,
it shouldn't
okay,
be.
Very good.
Yes. All right, with that, we'll take a vote. Those in favor of the motion on the floor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. We'll move on to closed session, of which there is none, so we will go to follow-up and administrative issues. Consider approving various board nominations, Construction Board of Adjustments and Appeals, Jordan Seffick, SMD 5 to a first term ending February 2025, and Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone Board, Trey Holmes, SMD 3 to first term ending July 2025. May I have a motion for those two nominations?
Motion to approve.
Move.
A motion by Karen, a second by Harry. Any public comment on those items? Seeing none, hearing none, we'll take a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. Announcements and consideration of future agenda items. You want to take that one on, Daniel?
I do, Mayor. So we do need to move forward to make sure that we schedule our budget workshops. We've had some changes recently. We looked at some dates that would be available based on the city council members' availability. And the dates we looked at, actually one of the dates that we had was the 11th of August. Turns out that SAISD actually has already booked the center, and they're using all of the rooms for the breakouts. So the dates that we had initially talked about changing to was August 11th and the 29th. We now propose either the 14th or the 17th of August to discuss the enterprise fund, and then the 29th for the general fund discussions.
I'd like to move the 11th to the 17th, but then again, I don't have that sheet in
I
front
have,
of me that showed availability.
I have the availability. It looks like on the 17th, Councilmember Hesse Smith and Gonzalez will be out.
Well, that doesn't
Is that
work
correct?
then.
Okay.
So-
Let's do it then.
14th is the,
Hey, yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm
Bye.
sorry. Sorry, ladies.
All right,
14th
so
shows,
the 14th, I hate doing them on Mondays, but
Love doing it on Monday.
you do.
So
hate it.
I travel on ends
Yeah,
of the
it
week and
works.
usually try to be back, so it would be really handy. if
Tom,
did.
we want to accommodate
Yeah.
your
Everybody.
request.
It's
Oh,
all
yeah, it's all about Tom.
Okay.
as long as Tom's here.
Exactly. I could do it Teams.
Okay, so the
So
14th
14th.
is the new budget meeting,
Which is Monday, okay.
which is Monday.
This is for the enterprise budget.
Now, Tom, would that be best for you at 8:30 in the morning or 3:30 in the afternoon?
You know, I prefer early morning, bring
Okay,
donuts.
so there you go.
With sprinkles, if you're
It
going to bring
just so
donuts, bring with
happens that
sprinkles.
that's my scheduled tax protest date at the
At what
at the
time?
county.
We're going to move that one 11th to the 14th.
At what time, dear?
Are we good with the 14th?
Are you okay,
We're
Karen?
looking at
looking at the
time
schedule.
because she has
Oh,
an
now it's all
appraisal
about
district
Karen.
protest.
It's all about her taxes.
It's all about taxes.
We need to bring a sack lunch and a change of clothes, Karen.
Shouldn't say, whoo.
do want to emphasize while she's looking that the importance of having all the council members present at the workshop. So when
We need everyone
yeah, absolutely.
here.
So when somebody can't make it, then we end up having to reschedule. So this needs to be set in stone really to make sure that we have these dates down.
1:31 PM, 1:31.
Well, we should, 8:30.
For the enterprise fund, we should be
Yeah,
done by
we
then.
should be fine. So it's going to be planned for 8:30 on August the 14th here in this room. And then the next one will be on the 29th of August. Is there any conflict with that?
I think we're aware of, at this point, we already looked at the dates and we're good on the 29th.
So we'll put that at 8:30 a.m. as well.
Okay, very good.
Okay. With that, may I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Did y'all address the Labor Day?
We did that earlier.
You're good with that one, to the 7th?
Yeah. I mean, we did that one some time ago to move it from the 5th to the 7th.
Officially?
Okay, well, it is now.
Perfect, okay.
So
Thank
it's
you.
September 7th?
Yeah.
Move we adjourn.
A second, please. There's a second. May I have a vote of approval for dismissal?
Aye.
Aye.
Barry, what would you like to do? Aye. Motion carries. We are adjourned at 9:16 a.m.
Go team.